Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
Welcome back
Yes.
to sunny England.
Thank you. I've missed seeing films with you, actually.
Yes.
I only got to see one when I was in Spain.
What did you say?
I saw this fantastic film by José called Prowler in the Night, which is a combination of Italian neorealism, but like done 5 years later, and film noir. You know, it was just...
It's a film from the 1950s.
It's a film from the 1950s. It was done at the height of the McCarthy era.
Okay.
And Joseph Losey was basically exiled. So, you know, the film was really released under the name of an Italian director. So I went to write a blog post on that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Murder on the Orient Express.
Murder on the Orient Express.
The new version of Murder on the Orient Express.
Produced by Ridley Scott, directed by Kenneth Branagh. Big 65mm production.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Dunkirk, these are the two big kind of keeping 65mm alive because no one shoots in that these days.
Yes.
We didn't see it in that. We just saw it in the digital projection at Cineworld.
Yes, though it was very lovely to see.
It was very lovely to see. It's nice to look at. That's a nice way to open it, I guess.
Yes, it looks beautiful. I think actually that, well, I'm a big fan of these Agatha Christie adaptations, though none of them are really great films. And actually, you don't expect them to be great films. So, you know, they're all star productions. They're often in exotic locales. They're often in the past. And really kind of the pleasure that you expect from them is glamorous surroundings, an all-star cast of, you know, stars who get a little bit of a number, right? And
Or each get a turn.
You know, wearing beautiful clothes, and the solution of the crime, right? That's kind of what you expect of this kind of film. So, and in a way, I suppose that's what it's.
It delivers.
I don't know. I thought it was quite enjoyable.
No, I just mean on those counts.
On those counts, yeah.
I was seeing a bunch of good actors, big names, in nice clothes.
Yes, and
we should say as well before we're obviously going to spoil the plot. Like, this is one where it is a whodunit. If you don't know whodunit, we're going to ruin it.
Yes.
So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we don't need to.
Well, I think we probably will end up because I think there's something.
I know you will.
Well, no, I think there may be something interesting to talk about.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Anyway, I think from a perspective of someone who's interested in cinema, you know, one of the interesting things is, you know, how these films almost rely almost entirely on star personas, right? So basically, part of the pleasure of watching these films is how, you know, a big star, but generally a big star of the past, right, who is an iconic figure, really, you know, how they come and do their turn, right?
When you say a big star of the past, do you mean as in watching old movies or as in watching...
Yes, for example, no.
You mean like Michelle Pfeiffer,
exactly.
who is not currently a huge star the way she used to be.
Exactly.
But she's in this.
And even Johnny Depp or, you know, Penelope Cruz or, you know... I mean, in the original Murder on the Orient Express, you had Sean Connery and Vanessa Redgrave, you know, who were quite big names then, and Sean was a huge star. But then you also had people like Ingrid Bergman and Richard Widmark and, you know, Anthony Perkins, people whose peak period had passed, yes. Right? But who were instantly recognizable to film fans. And part of the pleasure of watching these films is to see them and to either see them enact what they're iconic for or
play against it,
mm-hmm. Right? So, and you know, I love these films for those reasons, really. And often they're not very good. Some of them are really quite bad. But you know, I remember like in Death on the Nile, I mean Angela Lansbury, who plays like, you know, this 1920s. Authoress of steamy novels, right? Like, you know, she does this fantastic tango with David Niven that's just like a little comic masterpiece, right? Half drunk, you know. So that, you know, that's the kind. And Betty Davis, you know, who plays like this really mean countess with Maggie Smith as her governess, right? They give actors the stars a chance to shine, a brief moment, right, where they could do, where they bring in all the meanings that they already carry with them, as film stars, and do something kind of different with it, or enact it in the way that you expect, and in a way that becomes kind of a pleasure for the viewer.
And is that something that you felt happened in this 2017 Murder on the Orient Express?
Well, I thought in this version of Murder on the Orient Express, that did happen, but also you can't help but compare it to the previous version.
Well,
right?
I can because I haven't seen it.
Okay.
And I haven't read the book, so I came to I knew what the vague. It's iconic, Murder on the Orient Express. So I knew it was about a bunch of people on a train and Poirot solves a murder.
Yes.
But and I'd seen kind of parodies and stuff, but I didn't know the story. I didn't know who done it.
Yes, you didn't know who done it. I did. Anyway, there were certain things. We'll talk more about the stars and so on later. But one of the things that drove me crazy about this film, so on the one hand, I think it was quite pleasurable because, in a way, how could it not be? On the other hand, I also thought it was quite mediocre,
Yes.
And that was announced from the very beginning, where you see a conversation with Poirot, and somebody, like a minor character in Istanbul, I think. And all of a sudden, you get into like this extremely high up shot looking down, and you think, why? Like, what is that meant to express? Why are we seeing the shot from up there? Why are we, yeah?
I noticed that. Very early on, you're going, there are so many ways, so many angles to shoot this moustache from.
Yes.
Because you're going to be seeing it a lot.
I mean, there was no rhyme or reason from putting the camera up there. It didn't express anything. It created variation amongst the shots. So in a way, I suppose there's an element in which, there's a plus to that, which is that you never get bored. Like that,
And it was kind of interesting to look at. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't a kind of artless shot, but it wasn't as expressive as it kind of indicated it. It thinks it's more expressive than it is at points.
Well, actually, I was fascinated by it, so I kept looking for it in the rest of the film. And the thing is that there are very artful and interesting compositions, right? And clearly, the main project of the film has been, how do you shoot this in a train compartment, right? And in some ways, it's very, very successful. It's almost always interesting to look at. But then it's also not good enough because those interesting compositions are not in themselves meaningful, right? It's not as if by putting the camera up there or down there or outside or whatever, he's actually conveying something about the drama unfolding. Yeah. He's just kind of keeping the audience from being bored,
for the
right?
most part. I think it's elegantly directed, I think, but not very meaningful. Like it's really surface.
Yes.
What it does do quite nicely, which goes along with this kind of elegance, is it uses the long take a lot and quite nicely. Like it'll basically orchestrate these shots where you could do them in a load of cross cutting, a load of kind of back and forth cutting here there. But it just goes, well, we can do this in one shot, so let's. And it's more elegant for that. But it's very nice to look at.
It is very nice to look at.
And it's kind of involving.
The whole film is very nice to look at. And actually, the clothes and the jewelry and so on is all, very nice to look at. And I loved seeing some of the performers, actually. So, I'm very glad I went to see it, but it's very unsatisfying. And one of the interesting things for me is, which performers erase your memory of the originals and which don't,
Okay.
So, for example, I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was just like fantastic.
Yeah, she
right?
was great.
And I think in combination with the performance that she gave in Mother, I mean, I think for me she's like, one of the performers of the year. I think it's
Comeback queen.
Well, it's two great. I mean, I think it's lovely to see, an actress like that making a career for herself, past middle age. Yeah, like she's now, I don't know how old she is.
Oh, I'll find out for you because I always do.
But she doesn't hide any of her wrinkles, and she looks.
At least have a guess for me. Guess how old she is.
I would have imagined that she's about 60 or.
Well, you're right. She's 59.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
So anyway, it was.
Right, she's kind of wiry and sort of indecent and fierce and
yeah.
you just fire behind her eyes. I want to know what she's up to all the time.
I loved seeing her, and she has a role, right? Because there were other people who I love, but like Penelope Cruz is wasted, really, and it's very interesting because her role, I think, in the original was really like, played by Ingrid Bergman, who won the Academy Award for it. I mean, it's a ridiculous part, and but very memorably played.
Incredibly pious. Catholic.
Yeah, and people do imitations of Ingrid Bergman, as an African missionary in that part, but she's very memorable. I also thought that Wendy Hillier in the part played by Judi Dench here was much better than Judi Dench. She brought kind of like this mystery and drama, and you really felt, she was an aristocrat, whereas with Judi Dench, you feel she's like a podgy middle-class wife, in dress-up, really.
Speak for yourself.
Well,
she'll always be empty.
I can't speak for anyone else. And I loved seeing Sergei Polunin. Actually, nobody has mentioned that Sergei Polunin is in this film. And he's really just, the premier dancer of this period. It's a joy to watch him in movement. He gets almost nothing to do here. Basically, from the first shot, I thought, oh my God, isn't he beautiful?
You were having a little crisis over it.
Yes, I love him.
Too young for you.
And then he's given a few silly things, which is obviously what he likes to do. So he's given a little action scene, but obviously he didn't do it so well that it's mostly cut out, really. But I thought I loved seeing him in this. And then there were there were other people who I thought were very wonderful in it. What did you think of Poirot, Kenneth Branagh?
Kenneth Branagh, I really liked him. I think the film. I can't. I don't know about the other ones, but I think it's probably possible to tell these stories in quite a po-faced sort of way.
Uh-huh.
And this film has a real sense of humour about it.
Yes.
And so Poirot is, he does have his kind of, he makes little sardonic kind of quips and barbs every now and again. There's one that really made me laugh early on where they're trying to, his friend who runs the train is trying to get him on the train, and the conductor is saying, well, there's no room, every single room is booked. And they're rushing around the station having this argument, and someone says, are you joining us? And Poirot says, it depends who wins this debate.
Yes.
I laughed at that for about 10 seconds.
Well,
what I think really sums it up in a way is actually his character, I think, is quite well presented. So you've got he's in bed and he has a moustache protector.
Yes.
And his moustache comes in 2 layers.
Yes.
There's a moustache and there's a bigger one beneath it.
Yes.
Which is funny, but it's also kind of it's precise and it's mannered.
It's part of the Poirot thing.
Yeah. But the moustache protector is itself 2 layered. It has this extra little bump in it to protect. So that's like, not only is that sort of, he's very precise and he has things his way and he must be, but also it's funny, right? It's funny that he's got a special moustache protector for his special moustache.
Yes.
The film, and his accent, I enjoyed. I have no idea what a Belgian sounds like. Probably nothing like Kenneth Branagh. I really liked him.
Yes. Well, I liked him, and I thought he was very skilled, but I also thought that him directing the film imbalanced it. I thought that Poirot gets given way too much screen time in comparison to, the other version. Well, actually, that's not true of the television Poirots. But in relation to the other films, the Poirot character is meant to be one amongst many star turns. And here he dominates the film, And actually, I think it's interesting because he dominates the film, and yet he's not a film star, there's no pleasure in watching him unless he's doing something, right? He's a very skilled actor, but he's not, he's...
I don't know. I really enjoyed seeing his big performing moustache. I liked seeing...
You say you're talking about the moustache?
Yeah, but I liked... But the way he looks and the way he kind of just is... I liked seeing him on screen. And I like the way he interacts with everybody, and he's kind of... He's obviously suspicious.
Right.
But he's curious. And also I think it conveyed very well the idea that he's tired, right? This is supposed to be his holiday.
Yes.
And then he's kind of, he's like, oh, I'm too old for the shit. And he goes back into work. But he spends the whole time going, I really didn't want to do this.
Well, I wish he'd done less, and he'd given us more time, with Penelope Cruz and Johnny Depp, and everybody else who's in this who's so great, really.
I kind of understood it, I suppose, to be Poirot's film, I guess. I mean,
Yes.
but because Agatha Christie wrote the Poirot stories and he's in all of them, so I guess I kind of understood them to be.
I think in the novel that
his
would probably
stories.
be true. You know, certainly I remember it that way. But I think the films are different. You know, the reason for having an all-star cast is that you want them all to shine, really. And I think him taking up so much room means there's less room for other people. It's as simple as that. And he's the director.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I see what you're getting at. And I don't think you're wrong necessarily, but I kind of didn't really have a problem with it in the way that you did.
Right.
I do think that Penelope Cruz was wasted. She had almost nothing to do. I do think that Judi Dench was essentially wasted as well. She had a couple of funny bits, but she hasn't got anything to do. Olivia Colman just is so underneath it all.
She
She's
has
not a
2
star.
lines.
She's not a star, but I mean, I love Olivia Colman. I want to see more of her in
Yes.
everything. But then some of the others, Johnny Depp obviously has quite a bit to do until he gets killed.
Yes, and he's very good. I enjoy watching him.
And actually, Johnny Depp, he was summed up in Community as the bad kind of good. Johnny Depp.
The good kind of bad, you mean?
Yeah, no.
The bad kind of
There's
good.
one point where Abed says, I'll find it. This is just quick digression, but it's a funny bit. Yeah, because he's trying to work out. He takes a course on Nicolas Cage, and he tries to work out, is he good or is he bad? Every actor is something. Robert Downey Jr., good. Jim Belushi, bad. Jean-Claude Van Damme, the good kind of bad. Johnny Depp, the bad kind of good. Which I kind of think sums it up. Like Johnny Depp is, when I see him in something, when I know he's in something, I'm really dreading that he's going to really ham it up and overdo it and stuff. And then often he surprises me, and I enjoy him, as I did in this. Sometimes I'm absolutely right, and he's terrible. He's really, really is overdoing it. But I think he really suits this role. I think everyone suits their roles. I think it's well cast.
I think it's very well cast. I think people are not given enough to do.
What I would say is it felt brief to me. This is going on to the plot as well. By the point it got to summing it up and solving the case, I thought this has been quite brief. Like it got into everyone's story, but kind of not enough. But then I suppose, like, actually, if you were going, like, really, you want to just do it in real time and actually have like 3 days on this train.
Yeah. I don't know. I found it, like I said, I found it enjoyable, but I also think it's not very good. Right. And it's enjoyable because it looks so beautiful. It's very beautifully lit, and very beautifully filmed. But I mean, the weaknesses for me are there have been better Poirots than Kenneth Branagh, and he's too selfish. He gives himself too much time, and in doing so, he prevents other people from having their moment, really. And I would put Penelope Cruz as being one of them.
Yeah, she's number one in that.
Yeah. So it's it's a mildly satisfying film.
Yeah, reasonably satisfying. I think also the fact that you knew exactly what was going to happen.
Well, actually, that's something I meant to ask you. I mean, was it suspenseful? Because obviously it wasn't for me.
Well, we may get onto that in a second. What I was going to say is one additional point I wanted to bring up about how it looked is it's very, very heavy on close-ups.
Yes.
And not just
I noticed that.
Not just close-ups, but like real not like head and shoulders, not moderate. Really, really goes into the face quite a bit. To the point where you really notice it. And also, we were sat in the front row.
Yes.
Because some fucking bitch took our seats.
Erase that.
Because some lady took our seats. And which, the front row is always too close. It distorts the screen and makes it huge. But then there is something I think quite magical
I like
when you're
watching it
sat
that way.
right up to the front and you see a big close-up of Josh Gad's huge fucking fat face trying to come up with an excuse for what he's done.
Yes.
It's pretty special.
But it was too many close-ups. I thought that the combination of CGI and this kind of relentless use of close-ups, it gave it a TV movie feel, like a really glamorous.
I didn't feel that.
You didn't feel that?
I think the close-up was used in. I think he's trying to sort of guess at. You want to be inspecting people's faces when they're talking to Poirot. That's what I think. That's what he's trying to get at. I'm not saying it's entirely successful, but I think that's what he's trying to get at. The idea that you want to get into the details of what people.
That would explain the use of close-ups in some parts of the narrative. It wouldn't explain the relentless use of close-ups.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say it's not entirely successful. I think that may have been the idea.
I think there's an interesting tension between the moments of spectacle, right? The moments where you're outside on the train, or actually the last shot, which is, it's meant to make you go wow, with the train going off in one direction and Poirot walking off in another, and then the car kind of, headed to another direction, and it's got like a sweeping panoramic view that's very impressive. And the film has a few of those moments, right? Mm-hmm. The Istanbul, the people waving at the train. So there's a kind of a tension between those shots that I suppose are meant to be the money shots of spectacle. But, then in between, like, there is an excessive use of close-up, which, again, it doesn't seem motivated to me, and which I thought was not very good. Yeah.
Fair enough. No. I like the way they looked. I'm not because I think the motivation behind them may have been, like I say, the idea of inspecting people's facial tics for lies and stuff like that, but I don't think that's the entire.
But if it was meant to be, if it's primary, you see, this is the thing where I think it raises an issue of current cinema, because if the film was primarily designed to be seen on a big screen, then you could get all of that in a medium shot. You could get all of that actually in a shot where you see the actor's whole body, and you'd still be able to see everything they're thinking and feeling.
That's why I say
in their face.
I know what you mean, but I think it's also stylistic. Like, you notice it, right? This isn't it's not. I don't think it's accidental that these shots are so close up.
Oh, I don't think they're accidental, but I think they're detrimental.
No, that's fair enough. But like I said, this is why I'm saying I think this was like the inception of these shots. The idea behind these shots may have been that, and then there's so much from beyond that as to how successful they are and stuff. I liked the way they looked, to be fair. I thought it was interesting. I liked that. I think the face is one of the most interesting things to look at. That's why
it is.
That's why the close-up is a shot.
Well, without a doubt. But I also think it loses impact and significance if that becomes a dominant shot in a film. And actually, I think, people like William Wyler and John Ford have said you have to ration the close-up. The close-up is very invasive. Think of how you normally watch people, right? You don't get that close, right? So in life, so you're kind of it's best if it's used for its full impact, not if it's used as a default. And I thought in this film it's used as a default.
It's used a little bit too often. That's certainly true. And like I said, I'm not defending it the whole way. I just sort of I liked it.
Okay, let's
it's not the most important, not the most intelligent point. Let's get on to the plot, because I think the plot is interesting. I think we should talk about the way things go. And so someone's killed Johnny Depp, and there are 8 or 9 people on this train who could have done it.
Anyway, the thing about the plot is that that's one of the things that Agatha Christie was a mistress of. Kind of doing these quite intricate plots. And actually, I think also that's why Agatha Christie is so suited to this type of movie, because basically she's got these marvelous plots in these marvelous locales, right? And she writes characters as through a very small set of characteristics. She sketches characters, really, and they're all types, right? Which means they're perfect casting for movie stars. So basically what you have is these types kind of, that are revolved around the resolution of a mystery that has to be resolved. And kind of the person who you know most about, who is also a type, is really either Miss Marple or Poirot, It's a kind of a famous a character whom you already know.
And actually, the trailer for this film, there's this shot that everyone's sitting in the dining car, looking towards the camera, and the camera tracks forward through the dining car, and as it introduces the characters, it says, the governess, the countess, the accountant, the whatever, and so it is introducing them as the types.
Yes.
And I think that's great. You want to be able to talk about the film as like the accountant did this,
yes,
and the gangster did that.
I think one of the things that is lost in this current version. So again, dealing with things that were just so famous in their time. The the original Agatha Christie story is loosely based on the Lindbergh kidnapping, right? I don't know if you know about it, but
I know vaguely about the Lindbergh baby.
that's right, right. So that's kind of like the original source of the story, and then so that's the background, not the original source, the background to the original story, which I'm sure
Inspiration.
Yeah, I'm sure nobody knows of anymore, really.
I don't think it's still a phrase. I don't think people know the specifics, but people know that the Lindbergh baby was captured. It was a huge,
All right,
not
okay.
captured, but kidnapped.
Well, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that.
I've heard of it. So
Right.
take from that what you will. Like I haven't heard of most things.
Right.
I know of the Lindbergh baby.
Right. Okay. So, and what did you think of those black and white scenes taking you back to it?
I mean, I didn't think much. I don't know. I thought they were bad. I thought they were fine. It's just they didn't really.
I thought they were bad.
I mean, they were certainly unimaginative.
Yes.
Like when you do a flashback to something like that, it's always done in that same black and white way with a bit of a voiceover. There's nothing imaginative to those whatsoever. Nothing inventive about them. That's for sure.
Okay, so you were saying about the plot.
Yeah. So this gangster has been killed, and as Poirot, the train is broken down, so they're all just stuck in this snowdrift. And Poirot says, one of you did this, and I'm going to have to find out who. He's reluctant to initially, but he's talked into it. He goes, I've got to figure this out, because the way he's talked into it actually is quite nice. He says, the conductor of the train, his friend, says, if you leave this to the police, they're just going to pin it on the black guy. They're going to pin it on the Hispanic person, and because they don't like him, and someone innocent is going to go to jail. So he's kind of, from a sense of justice, says, okay, well, I've got to do this then.
Yeah, that Hispanic actor, by the way, was wonderful. I thought he really made something out of the 10 lines he had.
It's very little,
yeah. When he was interrogated, I thought he was really charismatic. His name is Manuel Garcia Rulfo.
He's the one that's when they show 3 or 4 people intercut at the same time being interrogated, right? He's the one.
No, he had his own brief moment, right? But he was the chauffeur who then starts a car dealership, and is quite well to do.
Which one was he? The one who was? Yeah, he was the one who was kind of smiling and saying,
Yes.
I don't lie anymore."
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
one.
That's the one. He was intercut with a few other people at the same time. They kind of getting through the interrogation to that point.
I thought
but
he
no,
was-
you're right.
I thought he was
created
wonderful.
a character out of very little.
Yeah.
Um,
He really made
memorable.
an impression. And the other person whom I don't know who made an impression was the young actress who played Polonin's wife. Let's dig her up.
Lucy
actually.
Boynton.
Lucy Boynton. She was marvelous.
Countess Helena Andreni.
Yes. I thought she was marvelous, and again, kind of doing, evoking a whole character out of very little, really.
Yeah, she was good. Anyway, so I'll get through this fucking plot eventually. So,
Okay.
it turns out that everyone kind of knows this gangster guy. It's not his real name, but everyone has some connection to him, and he was connected to this case that Poirot was also involved in a long time ago that he failed to solve, I think.
Well, he didn't get the letter in time.
He didn't get the
was
letter in
plot.
time. There are elements to the plot which I guess we'll come on to, but I just couldn't keep up with certain parts, and I found certain parts confusing. So everyone's connected to this Anderson character who had their baby killed.
Yes.
And this guy, this Ratchet, well, that's not his real name, but he came in through the window years ago and killed this kid. And I don't know, maybe stole some stuff. He's a bad dude, and everyone has been put through pain because of this somehow. So his governess is on the train, and maid is on the train, and the sister is on the train, and obviously you don't know this from the start. This all comes out as the story progresses.
All unfolds. Yes.
And I am going, I don't know who did this, right? Everyone obviously has got their reason. That's what you're expecting. Everyone has to have some motivation. Turns out everyone is really intimately connected with this guy.
Everyone could have done it.
Everyone could have done it. And I was kind of going back and forth. Like, I thought Michelle Pfeiffer made the most sense. I thought that when she was stabbed in the back, I thought she'd actually stabbed herself in the back. Because that was the angle the thing went in, and I thought, oh well, that would be a good way to cover it. And I thought there's someone else there. as it turns out, they all did it. It was a plan they were all involved in, and and that's why he was stabbed so many times. They all took their turn, and which I thought was actually a great resolution because
it's a great plot.
What happens is the film it kind of usual suspects you, right? Spoiler alert for the usual suspects coming up, in case you haven't seen that. But basically, everything's a lie, right? Everything that everyone tells you about what happened last night is a lie, and which is incredibly disappointing because a lot of what you've heard is really not relevant. Like for instance, when the doctor says, "I can vouch for the accountant. I was with him all night. We were drinking." Well, I mean, that's not even like he was lying, but it's not even a lie to cover anything up. It's just total bullshit. Because it's not.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, because both things could be true. I was with him all night, and I was with him murdering someone all night.
Because then like the film goes on to try and say, oh well, actually he was lying about that. He drugged him so he could do this, and you go, well, but that's also nonsense as well because it turned out that they were just all killing this.
Yeah,
guy.
but it all makes sense at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is disappointing that so much has just been a total red herring, I think. Because I wanted to be really getting to the guts of the case throughout. And when you realise that a lot of what you've heard and trying to piece together yourself is total fabrication.
But that's part of the process of this type of plot.
No, it's not necessarily. No, it's not, because it's specifically to do with the fact they're all in on it.
Well, no, but I disagree because, part of the detective's job in any mystery is always to discern the truth from the lie, and all of the suspects lie. That's part of the course for this type of narrative.
This type of narrative, but
the Maltese Falcon.
I know, but I'm saying I'm saying in this specific one, the fact that everyone is they're all in on it. So because you don't think that everyone's in on it from the start unless you're very perceptive or whatever, the story.
Okay,
right?
That's true. No,
so when I'm watching
the originality of this plot is that they're all in it and they all did it.
Right, and I will get on to what I like about that, but what I didn't like is the fact that it does mean that while I'm trying to weigh up the truth in what everyone says about what happened last night and what their whereabouts were, the fact that all of that stuff turns out to be completely not true is quite disappointing because I was getting invested in that. So when the doctor said I can vouch for him, I was with him all night, that's like a piece of information that I took in and tried to weigh up, and then the fact that all of that turns out to be irrelevant because they are all covering up the fact they all did it. That's quite disappointing. What it does do, on the other hand, that's good, is it makes sense of the fact that everyone on this train knows this guy. Yes. Like, why does everyone know this guy? And the fact that it was a plan and they're all in it together, that makes sense of that. That's I like that. Like, because otherwise it was too much of a coincidence.
To me,
actually Poirot should have said that, to be honest. Why does everyone know this guy? Something's going on.
Well, I think he does, really. Like, as the pieces begin to fall together. But anyway, I disagree with the point about. Well, you can't disagree with my experience. No. No, I can't. I'm trying to find a way to, but I can't.
I think it's fair enough. Like, it's something that the plot has to do, I suppose, because it has to drag you in this one direction to then be able to surprise you.
No, but I do think that an important aspect of mysteries is that the suspects lie. They all do. So you're actually.
I'm not saying I expect them to tell the truth.
You're just saying that the plot fooled you into believing aspects that you then had to discard.
Obviously, the plot fooled me because I didn't see what was going to happen. But
which is a success.
Sure, but it felt like it had kind of wasted my. I felt like my attention had been wasted almost. Like I really wanted to figure out. I was paying attention to the clues in a way that then it turned out I really needn't have.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I was adding up lies that it wasn't like a bit of truth here and a bit of truth there and I missed the mark. It was just I didn't need to pay attention to any of that. All of that stuff was not true. The film kind of, like I say, has to do that in order for the outcome to when you talk to suspects, when you see a film in which someone is interrogating someone, obviously you don't just dismiss what they're saying, right? You think it's a lie here or a truth there, or whatever. You try and weigh it up. So the film has to do that. it's just disappointing on that one hand that in order for the plot to ultimately make sense, so much of what I really bought into was just discarded.
Right.
That's just, but that's kind of, you can't really do anything about that. That's just what the plot has to do, and ultimately, I think it serves the plot because the plot goes to a place which I think is interesting. I just personally felt a little bit sad. I want to just clarify that I wasn't really nitpicking that. That's just my personal experience of the way it went, because as I say, the fact that everyone was in on this together is clever. It's not something I expected. It makes sense of the central weirdness of the film, which is that everyone on the train knows this guy. That just doesn't make sense until it turns out they're all in on it together. And
how did you think the last shots where they're all like in an archway in a cave, like sat around, like, you know, Christ's apostles in the Last Supper?
I really tried to sort of get away from that. I tried to think this can't really be a Last Supper thing.
It probably isn't, but it kind of has that totally, resonance anyway.
You can't ignore that image. Like, it really, they're not like acting it out, but they're all sat on the one side of this big long table.
Yes.
There's something Last Supper about it. I mean, why though?
And they're all facing Poirot, like, you know. So
it's quite beautiful, and well, not beautiful, but it's kind of interesting to look at. But in terms of,
I thought it was quite stagey. And,
oh sure, yeah,
you know, kind of.
But I think like the whole film is kind of, it's writily and stagey in a way.
Yeah. But actually, so that's interesting then, because I didn't mind it in other aspects of the film, but that one, it just felt like too forced, you know. I mean, he couldn't think of a more imaginative way of grouping the characters together inside the train. Like, you know, what are they going to do?
Isn't the way that everyone always does it, just inside the train, just sat around?
But you know, why would they go outside in the cold and sit in the snow
because they were
to have the final conversation?
Oh yeah, that's true. Well,
you know,
I mean, because it's manipulative artifice. It's there for the pleasures of the audience.
Well, I
mean, one thing that it can definitely be said about this Poirot is that he's a bit of a showman.
Yes,
he's not overly about that, but he likes the attention, as does Kenneth Branagh.
I don't know, when you see David Suchet playing him, you know, he's always like this fuddy-duddy little fat man, you know, a bit melancholy, kind of a bit conceited. I actually think that he brings out all of these aspects of that character in a way that Kenneth Branagh just doesn't. You know, so I think, and then to me, you know, Kenneth Branagh is one of those people who's like a very, very skilled actor. But I take no pleasure in just looking at him the way I do with Michelle Pfeiffer, Penelope Cruz, or Johnny Depp, right? So, you know, and so to give himself so much time to me was a bother.
One bit of pacing bothered me where he speaks to his girlfriend or wife, who is she dead? Or just
yes,
not
so
with
that's
him?
no. She's according to this film, she's dead.
Okay, and he speaks to her and he says, "Ah, my dearest Catherine, I do not know what I'm going to do," even though, you know, he should be speaking in bloody French.
Yes.
On his own. And Kenneth Branagh clearly can speak French and German, or at least he can speak those particular lines he's learned.
Yes.
So there's no reason. Anyway, and the film's not afraid of subtitling every now and again.
Yeah.
Anyway, he speaks to his deceased paramour, and says, "I don't know what happened. I don't know what the case is. Oh my God, I don't know it." And then immediately he comes out with an accusation to Daisy Ridley's character, and you're like, "Oh, so you do know?" Even though he is wrong, but still, it's like, I thought you didn't know, but now you do.
There's something just kind of a bit second-rate about Branagh as a director, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's an example of it, because, you know, he's by himself in his compartment, you know, talking to a picture of his dead wife. So, you know, why does he speak to her in English? It's those little details. And
but it's also, that's actually so uninspired. Like, the camera just sits there on his face. He's not very happy. It's plinky plonky music.
Okay.
I've seen that. I didn't feel anything. The whole point of there is just for him to go, that's him to tell the audience, I don't know what the answer is and I'm totally lost.
I know.
Yeah,
but he gives himself this whole aria, you know, where he denies us, the pleasure of seeing Penelope Cruz for 2 more bloody minutes. That selfish bastard.
So here's the last thing, right? Well, not the last thing, but the last kind of point that I know I wanted to make, and something I wanted to ask you about. It turns out that all of these people have together decided we're going to kill this guy because of the pain he's caused us through his actions. They've all been impacted in some way. and they've all had to deal with this pain. So they drug him and they kill him together. They each stab him, and Poirot lets them away with it.
Yes.
Poirot says, the scales of justice weigh differently in this case. Or something like that. He says, I understand that they... I can't remember what he says, but it's along those lines, right? The scales of justice are not always the way we think.
Yes, I don't think that's very well handled, because I mean, my memory is very vague. I mean, I haven't seen the original Murder on the Orient Express for 20 years at least. And likewise, I read the book when I was a teenager. But it seems to me that there was a more complex... I have this vague memory that there was a more complex answer given. That the reason why no one could be charged, though everyone said, it's me, like in a self-sacrificing way, was that, because 13 people did it, no one could be held.
Well, that's less satisfying than the way it's handled in this film, I think. Because in this film, it's a moral choice, not a practical one. In this film, he basically says, I could choose to give the police all the details at the next station and have you all arrested. He pretty much says that. But he says, I have chosen not to. I have spoken to the police and said that it was a random assailant who came in the night and stabbed him and went away. And because I'm Poirot, they believe... It's actually an interesting kind of idea of an abuse of power. Because he's Poirot, they'll believe him. And so he tells them a lie, saying that some guy did it, and then just went away, and saves the fate of everyone on the train, and says, you're going to have to learn to deal with this yourself, what you've done.
I think there's a moment before that, which again, don't believe what I say, but in my memory, it was also, it appears in previous versions of it, where Poirot puts them to the test, like in this film, so... and because none of them could kill him, right? When the gun gives them the gun, they have an opportunity to kill him, but instead, the Michelle Pfeiffer character decides to shoot herself, therefore proving that none of them are killers, right? But proving them not in a court of law. Though we also have an interesting thing in the film that previously the court of law had actually convicted the wrong woman and resulted in her death.
Right.
So it does have a kind of, but really it's so superficial.
I liked it. I mean, I thought that was interesting. Again, the thing that you're expecting is Poirot finds the dude who did it and sends him down, and that's not what happens, right? It's like the story is substantially not over once he's figured out who did it.
Well,
the climax obviously is always going to be that, and I've got everyone here, and I will now tell you how it happened. That's
part of the structure of these films. He always gathers them together and tells them how it happened.
Exactly, but then there's still this important plot point after that, which is I've made a decision on my own about.
Yes. Okay. Well,
fate.
Whatever.
I thought that was interesting. I think that's certainly more interesting than a practical thing about. Well, I can't send you down because I can't prove which one of you specifically did it.
Yes, I suppose. Though you could.
That's a bit boring.
Well, but it's a combination of all of those things. Imagine subsequently having to prove which knife went in first, because you can't convict other people from for stabbing someone who's already dead.
Yeah. Well, finding a corpse.
In a 1930s film.
But, I know what you mean, but I think
some set in the 1930s.
It's the more interesting kind of dilemma where it's...
Anyway, I also know what you mean, and I'm interested in what you have to say, because that is also the difference between having seen the film before, even though I'm not reliable in my memory of it really, but I did very clearly know who had done it. That I was sure of my memory. And therefore, kind of those elements of whodunit were to me not part of the pleasures that the film had to offer. So, neither was the resolution.
Well, then there's another thing, which is when a film has, an important revelation to make, as we've spoken about before. Again, we keep coming back to Blade Runner. We always do. In Blade Runner, there's an important revelation as to the main character, and then watching the film a second time is a pleasure because of the information you now know.
Yes.
And you see it in your mind. It plays out differently. So for you, I guess you won't have that experience watching this film a second time. But the first time, were you picking up on the way people behave towards Johnny Depp, that sort of thing?
No, I can't. I mean, I can't remember that because, as I said, it was so long ago.
No, I meant watching this film.
Oh, watching this film.
We looking at the way people, knowing what the resolution would be.
Yes, but actually, I was focused on other things, and that might be my own limitations, because I thought what the film did well was the clothes and the decor and the lighting and how everything was so beautiful and watching the stars, right? So really, so I was focused on, for example, I knew that Johnny Depp was the killer. So, then I was focused on kind of, how he was playing it, right?
Well, the person who was killed, the victim. Everyone else was the killer.
Well, he was killer and killed, yeah?
Oh, right, I see what you mean, yes.
So, I was focused on all those things. Yeah. When I was like looking at Judi Dench, I was remembering Wendy Hillier, who for me was an important thing because until I saw Murder on the Orient Express, I didn't even know who Wendy Hillier was really. So you have these other things echoing in your mind, but for me, a bottom line is if I saw this film playing on television, I would stop and watch it again.
Yes.
I would. Those pleasures that it offers would still be on offer, and you'd look at it, for different things. I would watch it.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't go to the cinema to watch it again.
It's got a little bit of a kind of Sunday afternoon ITV
Exactly.
movie feel to it, hasn't it?
It is.
Which is not the worst thing because those films tend to be they keep you going, like Mrs. Doubtfire and all the James Bonds.
Yes, no, it's excellent actually.
One thing that I'm still confused about who some of the people are. I don't think the film does a good job of everyone is related to each other through this Johnny Depp character.
Yes.
And these Anderson family. Who is Michelle Pfeiffer's character?
Michelle Pfeiffer is the mother of the woman who died in childbirth because of the shock of this kidnapping.
Yeah, you see, I think
and she was a famous
there is too
actress.
I say there's too much detail. It's not there's too much detail, but it's not explained well. I think I was muddled by the details of the historic case that brings them together. There are some elements which are.
I think they were all clear to me.
Okay.
Though again, I've seen this in various versions, so I don't know if it's just a cumulative knowledge or if it was from the film itself. But I think they're all explained because they're all part of the plot resolution. So, the guy who was the chauffeur, who then, the father was nice enough to lend him money to start his own car dealership, or the guy who'd been a cop on the case and, who'd been going out with the maid and then he wants revenge because she basically committed suicide after being indicted for a crime she didn't commit. I thought everyone was explained.
Well, it kind of is, but for me, it happened very, very quickly. Not that it's brief, but as Poirot goes through, and then we have this guy and this was his relation. Then we have this woman, and he goes through each of them. It does happen quite quickly, and at a certain point, it's kind of there's so much information which I'm still really learning at that point who these people are because that's when he's explaining it. It's that's the moment where he's going and this is you and this is you and this is you and it's all explained then because if you knew it beforehand it wouldn't be such a revelation. So you're learning it all at once and it's kind of coming at you thick and fast and I'm going I can't keep up, so I'm kind of having to take the film's word for it that he's right. Obviously he's right because he's figuring it out, that's what he does at this point in the film, but I'm just kind of the film's going, yeah, this is just trust me on this. There is one more thing. I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh, I like the last shot.
I like the last shot.
What did you like about it?
I like the way that it was so spectacular, that you had the train going in one direction and, then you had the view of the train and the hills and the snow and Poirot walking in the front of it and the car waiting to go in the other direction. But
beautifully staged,
and it had kind of like this melancholy air.
Yes, that's exactly the word that was on my mind.
No,
I found it melancholic, and I think it's and it's related to the way that I saw those final moments where it becomes a moral question of Poirot because he's had to look at the case in a way that he doesn't normally look at cases, and he's made this decision to let these people away with a murder. It's still a murder, even if it's a horrible person.
Yes.
And this is kind of weighing, and then he wants to go back to his holiday, and obviously he can't because the death on the Nile has to happen.
Yes.
And so it's not just that they're going in different directions, but the train kind of symbolizes this change that he's had to make. Right, you're told right from the start of the film he's about logic and balance.
Yes,
logic and balance. The first thing you see of him is he wants these 2 boiled eggs, and he wants them to be level in height, and they're not. And and then he accidentally steps in dog shit, or probably camel shit, because it's in Israel, Palestine at the time, and he says it's not the fact that I stepped in dog shit; it's the fact that there's an imbalance. So he steps in dog shit with his other foot to make sure that's fine. So everything is about logic and balance.
But at the end,
and in the end, I have to learn to live with the imbalance. So something really important has happened to him.
Oh, that's interesting, because you could argue the opposite. You could argue that the murder is a balance in its own.
Well, you could do, but I'm just going on. That's the line he actually has.
Yes.
I'm just learning to live with it, and so like on that car ride back to Cairo, he's going to be thinking about that, what he's done the whole way, and this train going off in the other direction symbolizes something huge that's happened to him. This is not just an episodic. This is one of the Poirots. This is a big deal for him. He did something that he was not used to.
Well, it definitely has that melancholy air, so your reading is a much more interesting one than mine.
Which I think and maybe that's some justification.
It's supported by the film.
Or maybe that's some justification for him having a bigger role than you expected.
Well,
it does at least, it's not like because it's not like I'm the hero because I solved the case. Aren't I brilliant? It's I'm the hero. I solved the case, but this is different. This is meaningful to me as a character.
I'm sure that was probably Kenneth Branagh's justification for it.
Well, they obviously got through to me. You just like your bloody Anthony Perkins.
I'm too cynical. I just think, he beefed up his part at the expense of the other people.
Yeah, you might be right. But I just want, some justification. This is what always happens, man. I always fucking end up liking the movie. Like, if I hate a movie in the cinema, and then I talk about it to you, I end up fucking liking it, because all I can be able to think about is, oh, well, actually, this was good, and this was good, and I like this, and this was the reason, and I can never remember why I hated something. That fucking Reese Witherspoon film we saw, I forgot how shit a time I had in that, because like I wanted to leave so many times, and then we came back and talked to it, and I was like, oh no, actually, kind of like, how do I do that to myself?
Well, you liked this one from the beginning, though.
I did like this from the beginning,
so
and
I don't think you're ending up too far from where you started, except with more justification for your point of view.
Yeah, no, I did like it. It is mediocre in all sorts of ways.
Yes, but it's also pleasurable.
It's so likable.
Yes, that's a good note to end on.
Yes.